Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. It's been nonstop. That short weekly Q&A last week definitely came in handy because even after that, I committed to so much last week that I didn't get nearly as much as I wanted to get done, but I did get a video a day done except for Friday. So I'm feeling pretty good. We're trying to get a video out per day throughout the rest of December and probably slow down a little bit into January as we wait for the expansion news. That may change because I want to do a Bravely Default 2 demo video. That demo's 5 hours long. That's going to be at least 5 videos. So I'm contemplating taking a day and playing that and then uploading those once a day for 5 days as well. So you might have 2 videos a day on that one. After I'm done with this weekly Q&A, I'm working on the E10 Savage Guide. I'm actually going to prioritize Savage Guides in general. This week, I was going to work on a Titan Unreal funny video, and I am going to work on that. Maybe even some highlights from our progression as some of my other raid members are doing the same. Of course, Tate's already posted his for E9 Savage as I am recording this. But we'll see. I've got a lot on my docket and a lot to work on, and I'm excited because especially going into next year, I mean, I want to do videos on Ruined King for League of Legends. I still need to do a quick news video on the Final Fantasy XI mobile game cancellation, or near confirmation of cancellation, I guess I should say. I know I have Bravely Default 2 in February, Monster Hunter Rise in March, and a whole bunch of other things between the expansion announcements and probably live letters and patch 5.45, which is going to be Blue Mage and Delubrum. So we got a good season ahead of us. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling motivated. I'm feeling refreshed after a long time of not feeling so much that way. Ready to put some stuff on the channel that I otherwise maybe wouldn't have done if I was in the same mentality I have been for the past couple of months when I was a little less motivated. But with that, a little bit of an update on where I'm at. Let's get into the Q&A because I don't know if this is going to be a short one yet because I haven't perused the questions just yet. But thank you to our sponsors over on Patreon for supporting the channel through those thick and thin. Is that the right phrase? I shouldn't use phrases I just can't do when I'm tired. Hey, thanks for supporting the stream over on Patreon. You guys are awesome. That's the shout out. That's generally the reliable shout out. Also, thank you to our patrons of Darkness, Kuja on Jenova, and Kurenai Oni. Both of you have gone above and beyond, and I appreciate that. And you know what? Even if you're not on Patreon, if you're here, Patreon's not mandatory. You get all the same content here. I just want you to enjoy it. It's been a hell of a year, and the least you could do is just enjoy a video. Because, you know, it's relaxing. So thank you for even watching this video. With that, let's see if there's some good questions. Spoiler questions will get prioritized towards the end. So there won't be any spoiler questions without me first vetting them and then editing them into the end of the video as opposed to right when I read them. All right, well, this does have something to do with story. It doesn't have any spoilers, so I can take this question first. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps, haven't asked a question in ages, and I hope you're doing well. I hope the same for you. I have a question for you today about the Nier raid, and I ask it specifically because you're not enjoying the story, so here it is. The story has been lackluster, but if we go back to before Shadowbringers came out, Yoshi P in interviews said how Shadowbringers was the perfect time to introduce these raids. And we still don't see why because the Nier stuff doesn't really mesh much. But then it came to me, they added one thing in Shadowbringers very reminiscent of the way Nier is played, New Game Plus. Yep, this is a conversation I've had in the past that they specifically added New Game Plus for the Nier raids because some of the decisions we've made throughout may affect the way that it ends up all the way in the final patch. It wouldn't get me to do it again. So if they expect me to play it through 5 times, they're out of their minds because I doubt it's going to do a whole lot for me. But I have definitely floated the possibility of them making us do that when it comes to the Nier raids. It would just make sense. That's the bottom line. It would just make sense. Do I think they'll make us do that? I do think the ending will be derivative of it, but I don't think you'll need to play through multiple times to get to the real ending. I hope not. Because while it makes sense in Nier Automata with the way the A, B, C, D, and eventual E ending end up working out, I don't see any decisions we've made up to this point that warrant doing the whole thing over again. Yes, there's the segments in, immediately following each of the raids that one could maybe determine, like, for example, whose paths that you choose to take at certain points during the previous patches or how you do interrogations of various NPCs. But I don't know that that's going to warrant anything enough but a change in the finale versus acquiring the true ending. So we'll see, but I've not ruled this out. I don't think they'll do it, but to rule it out when it comes to a Nier raid would be absolutely foolish of me. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Edit. Hello. Edited for day. You know what, though? That's a lot of extra effort to put a hello in there. I thank you. Hello. Thoughts on using the one player per job restriction in the Party Finder? I use it for current endgame content on Real and Extreme, but feel bad for excluding people, but also need some way to increase chances of clearing. For me, if it's just clearing, actually, there's only one place I think it actually makes sense. I think in Savage Raids, it's at least reasonable enough to want it for certain roles. Like maybe not wanting 2 of the same healer, like double white mage, for example. Or maybe not wanting 4 red mages, as much as the extra reses are helpful. The only place I really like one player per job is Extreme Trials. And it's because the weapon drops are per the job that, they are. You either get, a Dark Knight sword or a machinist gun or an Astro Globe. And if everyone's their own job, if everyone's just playing a unique job, then it means that you can essentially lock in one person getting a weapon and not having 2 people roll against each other, and then maybe only one dropping and the other person getting screwed out. As for anything else, I think restricting it to some degree is reasonable, but there are some times where people care way too much about the one player per job restriction than I think they need to. There's some really easy content in particular that I feel like it's not really super warranted. But for sake of loot on Extreme, that's the place where I think it makes the most sense. I wish there was kind of a way to choose how many of each job you could possibly want in the Party Finder, like a way to set a Party Finder specifically to like 2 melee, 1 range physical, 1 caster, without having to click each individual one and this slot is only caster and this slot's only this. Or to be able to retroactively make it so, only 1 of each type of healer, but not one player per job restricted for the whole thing. It's just a little bit of like some micro options between all of that would be pretty nice. But it's also kind of excessive because, I don't know, it's a lot of settings to have to go through for any average player in the Party Finder. So it makes sense. I get it. But there are some times where I think that it's used in content that it's really not needed in. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello there, Happy. Hello. What do you think about a stat squish in 14 and when do you think it's coming? We actually have proposed answers to both of this. I think a stat squish is inevitable sooner or later, although I don't think our numbers have actually hit that point just yet. The numbers are at the point where they still feel good without feeling like they need to be reduced. I would accept a reduction at this point, a stat squish to make the numbers not so crazy, but I also don't feel like it's super necessary. I think like once you go over the 1 million mark, that's when it starts being like, all right, that's a little bit much. But they've already said going into 6.0, way back before 5.0 even released, that they were considering 6.0 for a stat squish. So we may have it coming next year. We don't know for certain. It's possible that since they've said that, they've ruled it out for 6.0 and maybe pushed it back, but it's a possibility. Oh, this is a really, this is a one-liner practically below this last question. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, is there anything you'd say Stormblood, Heavensward, or Realm Reborn does better than Shadowbringers? I can't think of anything except for a few minor things. Well, then you can think of something. You said you can't think of anything. That's a lie. I'm trying to... I've often pondered over this. I feel like this is a matter of perspective. Because in Heavensward and Stormblood, we had like more dungeons, for example. We had deep dungeons in those expansions. And for some people, that's enough to say that those expansions did those things better just by, fact of having more of them. And while I'd argue that Heaven on High was better than Palace of the Dead because of some of its restructuring, it still had a ton of flaws and, in my opinion, just didn't... I felt no desire to really do it. And that Deep Dungeon kind of went that path overall. So Shadowbringers not having one, but us maybe getting, this 48-man Savage and the actual public dungeon and that of Casham Lacus Latore and the way the Relic quests have tied out, the sheer amount of side story quests and work that's gone into the storytelling of Shadowbringers, it's more like trades more so than having less, because I don't care about dungeons, I don't care about deep dungeons, but that's the thing, I don't care about them, so saying it does it worse than them is kind of just, because I don't care that they're not there in the first place. I'm sure there are some individual bosses I could point out that I liked in Stormblood that I maybe like, better than a Shadowbringers equivalent that we might have. But no, I'm just like you, I'm very hard pressed to come up with any sort of thing that I feel is definitively better. Oh, Stormblood Monk. I mean, some specific job designs in Stormblood in particular were really nice. Stormblood Monk was the most versatile the job's ever been, but that being said, I really liked the 5.4 rework that they did, keeping the core of the identity in place while making it so some of the tools they've added have a little bit more of a focused utility, but still having just a little bit too much chaff on the ends. I still think Stormblood Monk kind of beats it out in terms of overall design, even if it was not super new player, friendly at all. So yeah, maybe some individual job designs. Some people don't like the dumbed down crafting. But other than that, like, there's nothing that I specifically interact with that I'm upset with in Shadowbringers that was changed in Stormblood. Desynthesis. My desynthesis market was murdered in Shadowbringers. There you go. See, like you said, first I think I can't think of anything, but then I find these like little things where I'm like, oh, they made that change for accessibility, and now my market's dead in desynthesis, and I'm sad. But other than that, yeah, nothing major. All the most important things have been better in Shadowbringers, for me, at least. Here's another not-so-long one right under that. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey, Haps. Hope you're having a good day. Hey, and hope the same for you. Do you miss the ability to mount up in the endgame city? It was always cool to see a growing amount of Raider event mounts. No, I'm not too particular. I do hunt trains all the time, and I'm always teleporting around all over the place, so I see all sorts of players and mounts and everything. So for me, no, but that's because I'm very mobile. I rarely ever just sit in the endgame town and just do nothing. It's usually when I'm waiting for people to log in for raid, and that'll be the only time I ever do that. So I generally see all these things, whether it be hopping in Bosnia or Eureka or teleporting around for hunt trains. I see these things frequently, so I don't ever really think about it like that. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Mr. Happy. Hope you're having a good day, and congrats on clearing the raid tier. Thank you. Hello to you as well, and I hope you're having a good weekend / holiday season. I just recently came back on 5.3 after taking a 3-month break and while trying to catch up on everything. Currently stuck on new exploration content. To progress the story, I need to finish Castrum Lacus, but there are almost not enough people. Yeah, especially right after 5.4 hitting, there's almost no chance you're going to have enough people to do Lacus Latoria. Small chance, but closer to 5.45 releasing, you'll definitely see an influx of people going there. People are going to want to collect the items that they need for the Savage Mode raids or even for the normal modes. They're going to want to probably farm up some coins or maybe hope to get some Runner's Augments closer to that. So two things. Is your questions actually, do you think they'll change the requirement or make it more accessible? I do think they will. I think they'll add Echo to Castrum. I think they'll descale the bosses or decrease their health by a significant portion, even though they already do scale based on the number of people that actually zone in. But I do think they will. So I think it will get easier for you regardless of anything else that I feel. The other thing is, though, I think that you'll also see an increased interest in them right before Delubrum comes out. So around that time, you'll probably also have a better time getting through it. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello there, Hap. How you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. Hope this raid tier is everything you wanted for a final tier. That it was. 2 questions for you this week. How does this tier compare to Coil, Alex, Omega in terms of difficulty, progression, and enjoyment? Since Creator, there really hasn't been much of change. So commenting on all of Omega, it's kind of eh. There was a translation issue in 012 that led to some people taking longer. It's a longer raid tier than we've had in quite some time. But overall, I can't really comment on anything Creator and onward because they're all kind of similar progressions since then. Coil, I don't want to talk about because it was such a different era in time that it's just not comparable. I mean, it took like 2 months for Twintania. It was bugged, it got taken offline. Second Coil took over 2 weeks because people were just not that good at the game back then, and it was feeling gear gated for the time. We also had nothing else to compare it to difficulty-wise, so it was the first time we ever really had real mechanics that entire raid tier. And then Final Coil was beaten in 5 days, closer to kind of like what we come to expect nowadays, but still not quite that much because, this tier was 38 hours. Alexander Gordius was a fucking disaster. Midas was better, but still a disaster for the community. It's just, it's almost not even worth comparing them. It just comes down to picking out favorites based on your own experience. And this tier was solid all throughout. From 1 through 12, the whole thing was solid. 3 and 7 were kind of stinkers, especially for re-clearing them. But there's been worse fights. They just weren't very fun. So at the very least, while they may not have been fun, they definitely could have been worse overall. And 2, can you give the people who haven't done all the role quest and Shadowbringers a reason to do them? Without spoiling it, no. But for the love of God, please level 1 of each role, do all the role quests and all the follow-up. Please go do the void quests. Please. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Howdy, Habs. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for coming by and thank you for the well wishes. Long-time asker, first-time watcher, welcome, welcome. Last week you answered a question about games during the PS2 era. You had mentioned playing the Devil May Cry games as they came out. What are your thoughts on DMC2, especially coming after the hype of the first game generated? Also, what do you think we may end up seeing in the next DMC game now that Son of Sparta chapter has concluded? Keep up the content and have an awesome rest of your day. Listen, I keep thinking the Son of Sparta chapter keeps concluding, and I keep being wrong. That's a good question though. DMC2 I hated. Growing up, I didn't just buy into it because of DMC1 and then like laud over it like it was great. I did not like playing it as a kid. It's a gun game essentially because it's just not very well designed. I don't want to go too much deeper into it, but no. That's it. My answer is no. For the next DMC game though, I mean they've set up plenty for us. It doesn't have to be the end of the Son of Sparta story, and not by a long shot. There's still the mystery of Sparta himself because he's still a mysteriously vanished kind of scenario, and we just don't have any idea about what to go on there. Who knows about new demon threats, about Nero, about a time skip and something happening in the future, and something like related to the ancestors of these characters, or how long can they live? There's always a way to find a story to tell. A story's never over just because they've given you an ending. There's always a way to find more lore to draw out. And I firmly believe that when it comes to the Devil May Cry franchise. Now, what I will say is I don't think we're getting another Devil May Cry game anytime soon. I think Itsuno is going to go work on his other pet project of Dragon's Dogma 2. When Devil May Cry 5 came out, Itsuno said, or was, being developed, Itsuno said that he was given a choice. You can make Dragon's Dogma 2 or Devil May Cry 5, and he picked Devil May Cry 5. Devil May Cry 5 is done. He's finished it. It's got a special edition and everything, and I'm not even too sure that he was that involved in the development of special edition. But Dragon's Dogma got that anime. I think they're gearing up to do a little bit more marketing with it, and I think Dragon's Dogma 2, not for another couple of years, but I think that's going to be his next project, so I would not expect another Devil May Cry anytime soon. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey Haps, hope you're doing alright. Fellow Gilgamesh player here. Over the past several months, I've noticed the rise of the Radiance FC. I feel like I see more and more people in it, and some people I know joined too. One day I was curious and looked down the list and noticed a lot of people I remembered being Elysium, you included. Correct. Something happened with Elysium that drove people away. If there's a private ordeal or something, don't worry about answering questions. It's not. It's just, as time goes on, the leadership kind of just... The prolonged interest wasn't really there in leading an FC. And when new people step up to lead something and they've already developed something, in this case the Radiance FC, then groups of friends end up migrating over, slowly but surely. They join Statics with this FC. And it's just like a natural progression. It wasn't like there was like a mass exodus, ton of people left, ton of people joined. It was one person here, two people there, one person here, because the FC itself wasn't a hyper active place. And there were groups of friends that were already between the two, and it's kind of how Elysium formed in the first place. It was groups of friends from Collision and another FC, Death and Taxes, and they wanted to form something new, but it was essentially just a merging of groups of friends, and this is basically the same prospect. And it's just a natural evolution of things. Elysium's still around. The FC at least is still present, still have a house, to say the least. But no, there was not like a bad blood or a falling out within people within Elysium. It was just like people naturally flowed out because the leadership just wasn't super present because nobody was playing all the time. There wasn't really all the groups in the FC were kind of like some people were in the FC, some people were not in the FC. And it's just this a mixing and matching, but nothing negative, nothing bad happened. It was just little by little, it trickled out. Hashtag Mr. Happy Moon Days. I'm assuming that's moon days, as in the moon during the day. That's weird. Hello, Haps, and happy holidays. Same to you. Two short questions. One, do you think the Unreal system can work for old raids like Coils and Alexander and Omega? I feel like there's a lot that could be done with Unreal. Well, the thing is, Unreal is just scaling up old content to the current item level. The bigger thing is that Unreal is currently targeted at the extreme level difficulty of Primals, which is a very entry level difficulty. The odds of them doing it with the full-blown Savage raids, very, very unlikely. Not to say it's impossible, because the concept, they could just name it something else and be like, these are brutal difficulty encounters. These are brutal trials. They're just the old Savage raids scaled up, and they rotate, every patch, and like, this is the highlighted fight for the week, and now you can play this mini game. Like, the whole thing is copy pastable, but I don't know that they will. I wouldn't be too surprised if they did, but it's not something I think they're thinking of doing right now. 2, after the way Nier flopped, not flopped, it flopped. Do you think they might try another Square franchise next 20? No. Okay, so first of all, it will never be Kingdom Hearts. And I feel confident. I know every time I say it'll never be something, it happens. And then people shit in my mouth about it. But Kingdom Hearts, it will the Disney logo needs to be plastered everywhere for Kingdom Hearts to be in anything. So Kingdom Hearts will never happen in Final Fantasy XIV, especially as a full-on 24-man for the entire expansion. I hope they don't do it, period. I don't mind when things are inspired by. We saw the Crystal Tower pan out. It's so very Final Fantasy XIV, and as much as it's completely borrowing the general flow of events from Final Fantasy III, you could never have played Final Fantasy III and understand exactly how it fits in Final Fantasy XIV's world as long as you're paying attention to 14's story. You just get a little bit of extra nerdgasms from seeing it in the past. That's what I like when they do. I don't like when they do stuff like Nier and Omega, where it's just blind fan service. Nier could still pay off, but even the Nier fans I've spoken to aren't that excited about it. Maybe a little more after the most recent patch, but they're even just like, I mean, I get Yoko Taro is like, he's a very back-heavy writer, and it's not like we've never had that in Final Fantasy XIV before. Alexander was super back heavy. Omega literally didn't have a front because the story was so irrelevant for the first 8 fights. But man, I'm not that optimistic about Nier panning out, and I really don't want them to just borrow other franchises. If you're gonna do stuff inspired by the other franchises, if you're gonna take the Evolution world from Final Fantasy XII and Tactics and do that made perfect sense. It was perfectly integrated into 14's world and lore. But don't just lift it up and continue a story from another franchise that has nothing to do with ours. That's what I don't want to see. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps. Hello. Hope you're doing aight, as the kids say. Hey, listen. I'm turning 30 in a week. That ain't what the kids say. That's what I say. That's what the Jersey people say. That's what the dumb people... Oh, no, that's not right. Anyway, I don't have many 14 friends I could ask this, so I wanted to ask your opinion in hopes of getting some sort of vindication. While I play 14 a lot, I personally don't have a long burst of free time to get properly geared for and put time into Savage rating, so I just stay in normal. Well, last tier felt pretty fun in normal mode. I felt this tier was a total snooze fest. It may be because everyone had ample time to overgear. Well, you can't overgear for normal. There's no ample time to overgear because all the item level goes up when a new normal mode comes out. So other than buying item level 510 gear, there is no ample time to overgear. Plowed through a 0 duty finder shenanigans. Yo, you had a pretty good E9 then. E9 and E10. Actually, E9, 10, and 11 are full of shenanigans. E12, the occasional shenanigans, but 9, 10, and 11 are absolute shenanigan fests. So you got lucky on that one big time. Do you feel the normal mode is fine difficulty where it's at, or do you feel since it's optional in-game content should be a little more difficult? No, normal mode is literally story mode. That's what it's for. And I've actively spoken against normal mode being the difficulty that it is because I just like harder shit. But it's never going to be that. I know that. I've accepted that. And there's just some tiers you're going to handle better. Also, keep in mind, the longer you play, ideally the better you get. Not always true for some people. But you should have an easier time, especially with the difficulty of normal being a story mode raid, essentially. That should only get easier as every tier goes on. That should not be something that should be a consistent difficulty all the way through. At some point, you just be able to look at something and recognize it, maybe slip up once, and then be done with it. So getting those party finders are lucky, because, man, there can be some shenanigans in 9, 10, and 11. 12, again, not so much. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey there, Haps. Hope you're doing all right. Hello, and I hope the same for you. I have a question about your opinion on the design philosophy for Extreme 6 expansion as a whole. Seems like they've shifted from having tight... yeah, I was going to say. That's tight. No, they never had tight DPS checks, man. Honestly, Shiva's the tightest DPS check we've had this whole expansion for anything extreme difficulty with Unreal, that is. Not Savage. The team-oriented mechanics have incredibly loose checks with mechanics that are meant to be deadly and intimidating up front, but a complete snooze fest after you die one or two times. Yo, you say that because you use Ruby Weapon as an example, but let me tell you, some people never learn how Dynamo and Chariot work or how those Spiral Claws work. The difference being you can recover from them. That's the big thing. And also the Flexi Claws where you have to stand on them for this. There's a lot of people who just don't Never mind. Titania was a fight more like their usual design philosophy, and spoiler boss extreme as well, but Innocence, Varus, Ruby, and Emerald all seem to fall in the pattern. Varus has some spots that get pretty dicey at some points. High personal responsibility, low team coordination. How do you feel about this change? Do you think they'll continue 6.0? I think it's less about having high personal responsibility and low team coordination, because when you're in a group of 8 people, if you have high personal responsibility and you screw up, everybody else, it cascades onto them. So it's more so about less watching what your teammates are doing and reacting, and more so knowing where you need to go and making sure you do it correctly. This is actually something that isn't as unfamiliar to Final Fantasy XIV as you may think. This is actually advice I give to people who are going into Savage tier raids. A lot of people like to try and memorize where this role needs to go and that role needs to go and where they need to go and then where they need to move next. Instead of just thinking, okay, this happens, I go here. That's it. Don't think about that person screwing up. Don't think about that person screwing up. Think about where you need to be, because at the bottom line is, if you are not where you need to be, everyone else is going to suffer for it. That's just generally how Final Fantasy XIV works. Now, sometimes that responsibility cascades a lot faster, which is what you would refer to as a high team coordination. You need to know where your teammate's moving. You need to know where you need to go relative to them. That exists, but the majority of content is just knowing where you need to be relative to what the mechanic is asking you to do. And it's not all that uncommon to encounter that in Final Fantasy XIV. What has happened with the extremes is they become more recoverable, where it's not, you may die, but you're not going to take everyone down with you automatically. They have a chance to continue and recover, unless it's a very specific mechanic, something like, like Rampant, or something like a DPS check on ads, for example. If you die and your ad doesn't die on time or something like that, yeah, there's places for that where it's not always like a 1-to-1 like I'm describing here, but it's not as uncommon as you think. So I like that they're trying to make extreme bosses in particular more recoverable, because that's tackling the type of people who generally engage in that content the most. People who are going to be farming it, people are going to be doing it with complete strangers and not statics. And so it fits that exact what's that exact type of person who's going to be involved in that content. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. How you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. I want to ask you about your thoughts on Genshin Impact and what effect it might have on the gaming industry. Never had there been such a successful gacha game on major platforms, and now that Genshin Impact exists, I feel companies will try to do the same with more products down the line. I feel as nice as this game looks and plays, it serves as a bad omen for what's to come. Monetizing games is fine, but there's no secret that gacha games are straight up predatory. It's not beneath most companies to employ these tactics. Now that Genshin has shown more people are inclined to play gacha games, what's to stop other companies from doing the same? People have been willing to play these kind of games for a long time. When I was a kid, I used to go to the store and buy Pokemon trading card games, Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game packs. That was the earliest form of gacha I knew. Now the difference being, of course, this was a physical product. I could resell it, I could trade it, and that gives it a little bit different of a standing when it comes to comparing it to your modern day loot boxes and gacha games. The bottom line is a lot of people are already kind of into this stuff, and it's already been available on what is the most accessible platform in the world, mobile devices, for quite some time. People just who aren't associated with mobile games, don't ever think about playing them until now. And that is the big difference that you're going to start seeing. I don't think it's going to go any differently. We've had loot boxes for ages and ages and ages now, and most companies are going to equate it to being something akin to that. People who want a specific skin, people who want a specific item, they're already buying all the loot boxes. They're already buying all of the random packs that they can buy, whether it be a Hearthstone or a Battlefront 2, as you've listed right here, whether it be an Overwatch or a Genshin Impact. People are already doing this. And so I don't think Genshin Impact has any more an impact on that ideal than we already see in the gaming industry today. What you might see is more hero-based loot box / gacha in the future, because there's obviously an interest in it, even if it's an interest that really comes more out of the East than it does out of the West. All right, now the remainder of these questions are either lightning round or spoiler. We're going to be mixing the both of them because honestly, almost all the questions I skipped for the lightning round are spoiler questions as well. So I'm going to add a timestamp in the description to let you know when the post, when this section starts, and also when it ends, in case you, for some reason, really want to hear the outro of this video. Some people do. Some people want to hear, hey, ask your questions in the comment section of the video for next week. Some people don't. It's up to them. So the first question I noticed, which was actually even before the first question, do you think that We're going to finally be going to Charlene because we talked about Alphino and Alcé's parents. We talked about the twins, about their parents. A lot of people have been predicting. I don't feel confident predicting where we're going at all next expansion, other than the moon. So, and I always predict the moon. So even before spoilers factored in, that hardly means anything to most people. It's bound to, sooner or later, we have to visit areas like deeper into Garlemald territory, deeper into Charlene. There's the New World, Mericidia. I mean, all these locations are always viable. They just have to give us a reason to go there. Whether or not we do is a big mystery. But we've known a lot about Charlene. We've interacted with Charlene a lot over the course of the years. This doesn't read to me as anything more of a reason to go there, to just them bringing it up. The second spoiler question was, do you think we'll save the 13th shard? And it actually isn't, it doesn't go into any details on some of the quests that are available in 5.4, but I don't think we will. I think this is going to be one of those things that's constantly a possibility, but it's never going to be a full-blown idea, especially given how many of the most important players in this are actually side story quest people. And you'd have to do a massive amount of things to get involved with them. Not to say you'd have to do those things to be involved with it, but they're so important that without the context, it'd be kind of weird to have follow-ups to some of the quests we had this patch without doing all the things necessary to unlock them. What else did we have here? That was the near raid question. That's the stat squish question. Come on, I know I skipped past more stuff than that. That's the endgame map for the next set of raid tiers. Would you consider doing a public-only group? Not a spoiler question, but not really. I have pugged raid tiers before, but if I have an option, I'll always take a static. I'll never deliberately do just pugs for no reason, because I need to be able to have spare time. I need to beat the raid tier and get through it as quickly as possible, so I have spare time to do other things. What else was there? How does this tier compare? Somebody asked me to review their strategy, and they predicted correctly in that I probably won't cover that question because it's asking to like watch their video and talk about what I think of their strategy. I will say that I have done nothing to try and push my strategy on the Party Finder. I finally released my guide. Your guys are seeing this on Monday, so I'll have released it yesterday. I hadn't released a guide for E9 until then, and in that guide, I constantly say, I try to encourage, new stuff's going to happen in the Party Finder. I hope you understand how it works. I hope you understand why I did what I did and why I recommend what I recommend. But this is not the only way to do it. You don't have to do it this way. Please be willing to learn. Because after years of being harassed for putting out strategy guides and then better strategies coming out, and that's it, I don't want people to stick to only one strategy. I don't want people to have a happy strat. It has to be a happy strat. I never wanted that. I just wanted to release guide videos. I used to watch all the tank spot videos. I used to watch, even when I didn't play World of Warcraft, and even I'd watched guides for games like Ion and Terra and stuff, just because I like to watch people talk about those things with passion and with direction, even if I had no intention of doing them myself. So that was it. That was all I wanted. So I never expected anyone to make me gospel, as it has been sometimes with the whole Happy Brambles thing in the Party Finder. Let's see. What else is there? I know there was at least one more. Oh, here's another spoiler question. Perfect. I watched Stay of the Realm 272, and I'm kind of curious about something. I didn't pay enough attention, or did you all three overlook the fact that there are several parts of most Ascian souls around? No, we didn't overlook that. It just wasn't that relevant to any of our conversations. What often happens when they die is their soul returns to the life stream. And keep in mind that even if it's just a fraction of their soul doesn't split again and then spread to more people. Their soul essentially recycles as is and goes into the next thing. The problem is there's multiple pieces of each Ascian that's in the actual life stream. In theory, because they are sundered. They just need to find a fragment of it and then give it the memories. They're not going to find all the fragments and try to merge them back together. They just need some semblance of it, because I'd imagine locating a fragment of the soul is a good bit harder. This wasn't something that was just super relevant to any of our conversations, or at least none that I can remember personally. There's I think that might be good luck. Oh, this one was about apparently the Square Enix Cafe in Osaka posted, they have the iconic job skills by role, type in 4x5 grid, where Blue Mage was a caster and the range physical and healer both had a question mark. Yeah, that might just be because they only have 3 each. I don't think we're not getting another range physical. We're not going to get 2 range physicals in a row. I think it's just because they had Blue Mage in there and they had like an empty slot. I wouldn't read too much into that. Beastmaster is most likely a limited job. Oh, you're right, though. Beastmaster could be a physical limited job. You know what? I won't rule that out. I'd much prefer them to have an axe than a bow or anything like that, or a crossbow, whatever. But, you know, I won't rule that out. That makes perfect sense. Healer for 6.x, I'm 100% on board with that prediction. I think it would be ridiculous if they don't do a healer in 6.x. So, yeah, definitely. And then there was one about math. You can probably understand why I left that for this section. Because I don't think I'm going to do a guide on math. Because I don't do any of the calculations that the Balanced Discord does. I mean, I would just be reading what's there and then regurgitating it in a video. And if you didn't understand it there, you're probably not going to understand it any better if I make a video about it. You know what I mean? So that's just something that if you really need to know more about, you want to know more about, you should probably talk to the people in the Discord who are actually doing these vacuum math calculations and you know, coming up with these numbers, because that's probably a better way of engaging with it than asking me to tell you how to engage with it. At least that's my opinion. And then there was another one. Is anyone feels gypped that we're what amounts to a couple of dorky high schoolers solving all these problems? No, because these are people who are literally raised in a civilization that was basically attempting to be all-knowing, the highest intelligent beings in all of the land. They've undergone all sorts of studies and rigorous training that we as a player can't really comprehend because it's never really been shown to us. It's only been something that's really talked about. So them being persistent enough to want to save the world, to want to find problems, solutions to problems, you know, it's not really all that surprising. It's also a Final Fantasy trope, in all honesty. Almost all Final Fantasy games are, most of the time, teenagers or young adults saving the world. And honestly, it's in terms of Eastern culture storytelling, there's tons of stories that are like that in general, whether it be one of someone's favorite anime or Persona 5 or something like that. It's not all that surprising. It's a pretty common thing within the genre itself. And then there's usually some older figures along for the way, ones that are wiser, ones that often have more meaningful moments and contributions to these things. They help push everything along, even if it's the young ambition that's actually going forward with a lot of these plans. So I'm in no way ever surprised by something like that. As someone, and also they asked if someone who's machinist, would you say monk or red mage be a better fit for a second job to play? Neither of them. I mean, they're not comparable to machinist. Actually, with machinist speed, you might really like monk now. That is always fast. So actually, yeah, I'll answer that question with monk. That's definitely the one. I think that's the final question for this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. So thank you, everyone, for supporting the stream, Tells you where my brain's at, man. Because nothing's slowed down. I've still been streaming 7 days a week, 7 hours a day. A lot of days more than that. And you can tell that my brain is still in there. Thank you for watching this video, this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. That's what I'm supposed to say at the end of the YouTube video. But thank you for watching. Be sure to ask your questions in the comment section of the video below. And I don't have anything else to add, so I might just add the spoiler thing at the end last time, and then that's it. Thanks again to our sponsors over on Patreon, and you know, I'll see you for one more episode. Actually, the next recording is going to be on my birthday. I might need to record that the day before, because that day is going to be a long one probably for my birthday, and I don't know that I want to do Q&A. We might actually record the next Mondays on Saturday, so get your questions in before Saturday. Not on Sunday, because it probably won't make it into the video. But with that, thank you for watching. I will see all of you in the next weekly Q&A. Be on the lookout for the rest of our Savage guides this week, as well as just populating the channel with the normal mode guides for a lot of stuff. I don't care how late they are. I just want to populate the channel with the videos. And I will see you all in the next one. Until then, take care.